Welcome to the John Freakin Muir Pod. Lace up those boots and sling on the pack for a romp through trails, short and long. With your host and Renaissance man, Doc, it's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail. I'm Doc, and this is the John Freakin Muir Pod. Let's start off with the obligatory reminder. If you are enjoying the podcast, take just a minute, help us out. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're not enjoying the pod, well, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. Now, I say that in every episode, and you know the reviews are not flying in, but people are still listening. So I have to think that they're enjoying the pod because they are still listening. But you know, hit the pause button right now and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Help us out. All right. Well, let's get to this week's guest, who has been on the podcast before and is a huge fan favorite. In fact, after his appearance in season 2 on the podcast, I've had several of you reach out to me and say, "Hey, when are we getting TAT back on? When's he coming back on? Get him back on." And so I reached out to him, and you know what? Your questions have been answered. He is here tonight. When last we heard from him, he was getting ready to head out on the Continental Divide Trail on the last leg of the Triple Crown for him. So welcome back to the John Freakin Muir Pod, Jeff TAT Oliver.
Thanks for having me back, brother. You know me, I'm always ready to talk about hiking. So here I am.
And it does not seem that long ago that you and I talked, but it was all the way back on April 12th.
Yeah, it was a while ago. Time flies when you're on trail. You really lose track of all the times. But yeah, it's been a while. Yep.
And so just some reminders for our listeners and for you. TAT, you have to tell us the story behind TAT. I'm very familiar with it, but maybe some of our listeners who are tuning in for the first time, this is their first experience with you. How did you come by TAT as a trail name?
I shot myself in the foot by naming my YouTube channel that, because now I have to explain the story every single hiker I meet. So my trail name is TAT, and when people meet me and I tell them the trail name, they automatically assume it's because I'm covered in tattoos, which is fair enough. I get it. Where that name came from, I actually named my YouTube channel TAT. It stands for I've Been to a Town. It's a line from the movie Jeremiah Johnson, which is my favorite movie of all time. The basic premise is Robert Redford plays a fur trapper after the Civil War, and he's being attacked by Native Americans the entire movie. And his mountain man buddy looks at him one night and says, you know, maybe you should get out of these mountains, go down to a town where it's safe. And he looked at him and he says, I've already been to a town. Like, he'd rather stay up in the mountains because that's where he's happy, even though his life is at risk. I love that line so much. I stole it, named it my YouTube channel that. This is before I even started through hiking. Once I hit the trail, people knew me from that, and it stuck as a trail name. So if you want to believe it's from the tattoos, so be it, but that's the real story behind the name.
Yeah, so when you're in the mood not to give that long story, you just say, "Hey, tattoos." But when you got some time on your hands, then you give them the full explanation.
I do love telling that story because it does mean a lot to me. I wouldn't have named my YouTube channel that, but I love that movie and I love that line. So yeah, I do like the story behind it. So yeah, when I got the time, I'm glad to tell it.
Yeah, really, it seems like it really resonates with your lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And I got you mid drink there as you were drinking your Diet Coke.
Oh, sorry. Absolutely.
All right. And hey, another reminder for you. Just want to point out that we do have a segment towards the end of the episode called the Pro Tip Insight of the Week. And that's where I will turn to you and say, TAT, what little piece of trail wisdom do you have for our listeners out there to make their next outdoor experience even better? So don't be surprised when we get to that.
Okay.
All right. Hey, since the last time we talked, I put in a new little segment that I really enjoy. And it's called the hiking poll. And it's not POLE, it's POLL. So a survey here. We got some topics here. I want to get your opinion. Let our listeners out there know which side of the fence you fall on with each of these topics. So let's
go for it.
All right. First one, boots or trail runners?
Trail runners. I would say if you spend any time on these long trails, through hikers at least, you'll see 90% of them wearing trail runners. They're lighter, they dry out quicker. Yes, they're not as durable. There are through hikers that do wear boots still. I've met plenty of them. Personally, I'll never go back to boots. It's all trail runners.
Okay. And on a trail like the Continental Divide Trail, 3,000, 3,100 miles, thereabouts, depending which route you take. How many sets of trail runners did you go through?
I think I went through 6 pair actually. I wear, that's the downside of trail runners. They're not durable. So for me, I'm consistent with getting 400 to 500 miles out of a pair, and then they're pretty much toast. I have rocked a pair for over 700 on the PCT. But in reality, looking back, I probably should have swapped them out at 500. They're just not durable. So yeah, the price adds up, on trail runners, but I don't get blisters and they dry out so quick. I'll take those downsides over not getting blisters any day of the week. And that's why I stick with trail runners.
That's right. I totally agree with you. I switched to trail runners because I was having blister problems with my boots, and haven't had a blister since, and it's been a game changer.
There are traditionalists out there. They'll always rock boots, and it works for them. So do what works for you. Personally, I love trail runners. I'll never go back.
Absolutely. All right. Next one, tent or tarp?
I'm a tent guy. Yeah, I'm a tent guy. I've never tried the hammock thing. I've never tried a tarp. There's something for me about, that tent is my home for 6 months. So, I love going in there at night. It's my own little cocoon at night where I can kind of close myself off from other hikers that may be around me and just kind of be by myself. So I just love being in my tent at night. And on top of that, I've cowboy camped before. I hate doing it because I'm so disorganized with my gear that as soon as I get to camp, I just toss my shit everywhere in my tent. And if I had a tarp or something would be lost in the morning. I need all that stuff around me in my tent. Yeah, there's a routine of setting it up every night and breaking down every morning. It's just relaxing. I don't know. I just love being in a tent. Okay. And especially when it's raining outside, just that sound hitting your tent at night is pretty special.
Right. Okay. So inside that tent, sleeping bag or quilt?
When I first started backpacking, I was using a sleeping bag, and then started researching gear on what other thru hikers were using, and it seemed like most of them were switching to quilts. So before I hit the AT back in 2018, I switched to a quilt just to try it out. I did a few section hikes with that quilt before my thru hike, and found that I liked it. And you're missing the hood on a quilt, but you just wear a beanie and you're fine. And in the summer months when it's hot, you can unzip that thing completely like a blanket, so you can air it out. So it's very multi-use. You can I get away with one quilt the entire thru hike. Whereas you see a lot of people that are using sleeping bags. They might have like a 10-degree bag and a 40-degree bag for the summer months, and they swap them out. Whereas a quilt, it's kind of you can use one thing to do best of both worlds on a thru hike. So yeah, I switched to a quilt back in 2018 and haven't looked back.
Yeah, and those you can get a nicely rated quilt, a real cold rated quilt, and then hang a leg out or put it down, push it down. It's a lot easier to sleep in, be able to move around on it in it freely. If you are I guess it depends on how you sleep. So if you are a kind of guy who just climbs into a bag, sleeps on his back, and doesn't move the whole night, maybe that's the way to go for you. But man, if you're a side sleeper or you're moving around a lot, the quilt is a lot less constricting.
Yeah, I'm a side sleeper. I will say the quilt I used on the AT and PCT, I ended up using the same quilt that lasted 2 thru hikes from a company called Enlightened Equipment, which they make really good quilts. There's many companies out there that make good quilts these days, but Enlightened Equipment I got, and because I roll around so much, I did feel a little trapped in that thing. So especially companies like Enlightened Equipment, you can customize these things on their website. So I switched and got a wide version for the CDT. That allowed me to roll back and forth and not feel like I was cramped in there. So consider that if you're getting a quilt. They make them customize it, the denier of the fabric, the length, the width, the temperature rating, everything can be customized through that company. So give it a shot, and then if it's not working for you, you can customize it after that to suit your needs.
That's great. All right, and last question in the poll: stove or cold soak?
I'm a stove guy. Always have been and always will be, mainly because I'm a coffee addict. On trail and off, I need hot coffee in the morning. Even in the summer months when it's 90 degrees by 10 a.m., I'm fiending for hot coffee in the morning. So I could get away with cold soaking food, no problem. Actually, in fact, cooking is a chore for me when I'm on the trail. I absolutely hate doing it. you need calories to hike on these thru hikes, or else you're screwing yourself. So you need to force yourself to eat. Now, I will say having a hot dinner in the colder months is a nice treat at the end of the night, but it was still a chore for me. I always hated it. So yeah, I could get away with eating just wraps and just like, spooning peanut butter out of a jar and be just fine calorie wise. But like I said, the hot coffee thing in the morning, that's the reason I'll always carry a stove.
Yeah. Anybody who's tuned into your videos on your YouTube channel knows about that hot coffee in the morning.
Yeah, it's I start my morning on YouTube every day filming me make coffee. So it's kind of become my thing. If I were to skip that, then there'd be a lot of upset people watching me, I'm sure.
Hey, another feature we've been doing, I'm not sure if we did this back in April or not, but it's the must bring gear review, and it's sponsored by the ultralight backpacking gear company Outdoor Vitals. Does this sound familiar to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did we do that before?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. All right. So now that you've got another 3,100 miles under your shoes, I want to see if your must bring piece of gear has changed. So this is how it works. If you were to let a stranger pack your bag with pretty much generic gear for a multi-day hike, what is the one specific piece of gear you would insist on being packed? And if you've got a particular brand, even better. So IBTAT, what is your must bring piece of gear?
I'd like to say my camera, but I know that doesn't apply to most hikers because I film and photograph so much. So as far as like traditional hiking gear, a good pair of trail runners, because your feet are everything when you're on the trail. It's if your feet are messed up, you're not pushing miles. I don't care. You could have the best backpack in the world, the best tent, whatever. But if your feet are messed up, you can say goodbye to your thru hike. So your feet are the biggest thing you have to take care of on trail. And so a good pair of trail runners is number one for me.
And what brand of trail runners do you typically go with?
I've worn, I started with La Sportiva Wildcats before I started thru hiking. I found that I got blisters with those. They weren't quite wide enough for my feet. And then somebody had told me about Ultra Lone Peaks, and how they have really wide toe boxes. So I gave them a shot, and that was back in the 2.5 version of those shoes. They're up to the 5.0s now. So I've rocked those since the 2.5 version. I've had a total of 3 blisters combined on all 3 thru hikes wearing those shoes. And like I said before, they're not the most durable things in the world, but because I've had so few blisters and your feet are so important on these long hikes, that's why I've stayed with those shoes. And I'm a strong believer in if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's plenty of other brands that probably will work for me, but I have no reason to change because Lone Peaks, they keep my feet in tip-top shape on these hikes.
There you go. IBTAT says Ultra Lone Peaks, and I have to agree. Those are a pair of fantastic shoes. And if you're right, exactly right. If it's not broke, don't fix it. So, All right. And I'm curious. That's a good point. You use those shoes on all 3 hikes. What did change in your gear from hike to hike, from AT to PCT to now the CDT? Any big changes for the CDT?
No, it's basically the same setup. I've upgraded gear as far as new models come out, but the basic same setup I've used on all 3 trails. I use a non-freestanding tent. I've used a quilt on all 3 trails, same shoes. The stoves I've changed up a little bit only because I've had some mishaps with my stoves. I've tried 2 different ones on these 3 thru hikes. And what else have I changed? I've had real bad issues with sleeping pads on all 3 trails. But I've always used Thermarest pads, a blow-up pad I need because I'm a side sleeper. But the basic setup has been the same. It's just upgrading gear to newer models is all.
Right.
Again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Hey, before we get into the CDT, let's remind our listeners kind of where you're located and also your backstory. What is the origin story of IBTAT? Where you grew up, how you got involved in thru hiking?
I'm currently in Georgia. I don't really have a home. Wherever I end up is where I end up. It's not like I have a home to go to. But I've ended up in Georgia the last 2 years. But I grew up in Michigan, Southeast Michigan. But I got introduced to the outdoors. Most people that live in Michigan, the money is to be made in Southeast Michigan around the auto industry, which most of the economy is run around the big 3 in Detroit. But I don't say most, but a lot of people have cottages up in northern Michigan. We call it up north. It's like the Pacific Northwest or up in the northern East Coast up by Maine. It's the same kind of vibe. So I spent my childhood, we had cottage up in northern Michigan, and I grew up a deer hunter, fisherman, outdoorsman. I didn't miss an opening day of deer season from the time I was like 12 or 14 all the way up to like 22. It was deer camp. That's what you do in Michigan. Like schools are closed on opening day of deer season in Michigan. That's how important it is. So yeah, I grew up running around the northern Michigan woods. I wasn't a hiker per se, just an avid outdoorsman, fisherman, and all that. Hiking came later on, but I've always had an appreciation for the outdoors growing up in Michigan.
Okay. And when did you get into hiking? When did you actually hear that there was such a thing as a trail that goes from the Mexican border to the Canadian border, and you can walk that entire length?
It wasn't until my mid-30s, actually. I was living out in Montana, working as a pack guide up in the Bob Marshall Wilderness. And I lived up in Montana for 4 years. So my introduction to actually backpacking was up in Glacier National Park on the Highline Trail up there. It was actually my first like real legit backpacking trip. Absolutely fell in love with it. It was, and I had read A Walk in the Woods way back when it first came out. So I knew of the Appalachian Trail, had no idea about the Pacific Crest Trail or any of those, but I knew of the Appalachian Trail from that book. But then I had moved to North Carolina and I started doing section hikes on the AT. And I was doing an overnight trip up on Max Patch, which is a section of the AT near Hot Springs, North Carolina. And I had met a couple thru hikers that were hiking that year. They'd come up and camp next to me, and I got to talking to them. I saw them walk off Max Patch the next morning, and I thought, I'm like looking at these guys, and I'm like, these guys are hiking to Maine. That is the coolest fucking thing in the world. And so I went home from that trip and started Googling long AT, long trails through hiking, and I became obsessed with it. And from that moment on, I had decided not just to do the AT, but I wanted to triple crown. I wanted to do all three of them. So yeah, that was back in probably 2016, 17, somewhere around there is when I became obsessed with through hiking. and actually hiked the AT in 2018 is when I started through hiking. But up until that point, when I decided to do the long trails, I figured I better see if I actually like this lifestyle first. So I went to REI, bought a bunch of gear, and I started doing weekend trips on the AT, which quickly turned into weekend section hikes, week-long trips. So by the time I had hit the AT for my through hike, I had already section hiked pretty much the whole southern section of the AT up until like Damascus, Virginia. I'd already done all that as a section hiker.
Got it. And before we get into a little review of your AT hike and your PCT hike, I want to just point out to folks that your Instagram handle is not IBTAT. It's actually Saved by Mountains, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So your YouTube is IBTAT, your trail name is IBTAT, and your Instagram is Saved by Mountains. You want to explain a little bit about how that came to be?
Yeah. Saved by Mountains, I take that quite literal when I named my Instagram handle that. So my backstory is I grew up in Michigan as a hunter, outdoorsman. Well, I always had a drinking problem from the time I was young, probably 16, 17 years old. I started to develop an early drinking problem, which only got worse as I got older. By the time I had hit my 20s, I was already a full-blown alcoholic, and basically drank my life away for close to 15 years. I got to the point where, I was getting close to death's door. I'd already attempted suicide twice. I was extremely depressed. I was alone in the world, and I didn't want to continue. I woke up in 2013, the day after my birthday, and I looked myself in the mirror and I said, well, you have two choices here. You can either live or you can die. It's up to you. I had people in my life that were close to me that were trying to get me to quit for the longest time, but I had to make that decision. So I woke up, I looked myself in the mirror, and I said, that's it. I'm done drinking. I went cold turkey, which not a lot of people can do. It was very difficult. I went through a couple of weeks of withdrawals and then finally got over that period. And that's when I went to the local outfitter, bought a backpack and a mountain bike and started playing in the mountains. The mountains saved my life. When I quit drinking, I had a huge void in my life. I've been drinking every day for the last 10 to 15 years. So when I quit that, I didn't know what to do with myself. And backpacking and hiking in the mountains filled that void that I had in my life when I quit. So I say saved by mountains, quite literally. The mountains did save my life.
And it's not just the physical aspect we're talking about. We're not talking about, the exercise and getting into shape. It was very much a mental solution.
Mother Nature,
well,
yeah, it's a mental thing for sure. They went hand in hand. Depression, alcoholism, a lot of that goes hand in hand. Mother Nature can heal you. Not everybody. I tried everything under the sun to get sober. AA, went to inpatient, outpatient treatment, therapists, priests. I went to everything. That didn't work for me. It works for some people, didn't work for me. Once I got out in Mother Nature, got some vitamin D in my body, and started hoofing up mountains, I felt a sense of purpose. So Mother Nature definitely healed me for sure.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to get too deep into this, but what do you think it is about Mother Nature that is so healing and regenerative?
I'm not a religious person. I wouldn't even say I'm spiritual, but personally, when I'm in nature, you feel something. And I don't know if it's they talk about in AA, a higher power, whatever that may be. There's something bigger than me in those mountains that I feel like. It's hard to describe. I don't know. I feel at peace when I'm out there. Mm-hmm. When I get off these trails, I'm around a bunch of people and I don't hear the birds chirping and I don't hear mountain streams and I'm not, exerting myself physically up mountains. I'm missing something in my life. The minute I go out on a day hike, you immediately feel that whatever it is, higher power immediately. And if you could be having a shitty day, no matter how shitty it is, you go out on a walk through the woods, you come back feeling like $1 million. It happens to every time. So, I wouldn't say I'm completely healed from my past, but I know that if I'm getting those old feelings back, all I have to do is go take a walk out in the woods, and it's gonna make me feel a hell of a lot better. So.
Right. Get away from the hustle, the bustle, all the appointments, all the distractions. Get back to the simplicity of being out there on a walk in the woods.
The powerful thing, man.
Yeah.
And anybody that's been out on a thru hike, they can tell you the same thing. They'll probably describe it a little different, but there's a feeling you get from being in Mother Nature that is too special to put into words.
Mm-hmm. And literally saved your life.
Absolutely right. Yep. I'd probably be dead or in jail if I hadn't found thru hiking, to be honest with you.
Okay. So you did some section hiking of the AT, and mm-hmm. then you decided, hey, I'm going to do the full thing, Georgia to Maine. And how did that go? That was your first long trail, right?
Yeah. I think it comes from my addictive personality. Like I could have easily just said, hike a week here, and then go back to work. No, it's like I got full bore or don't do it at all. So yeah, I decided to do the whole thing, and not just that, but the Triple Crown. I'd planned from the get go. Like I said, I had done a lot of section hiking before my thru. So by the time I hit the trail, I wouldn't say I was seasoned, but I had a pretty good idea of what I was in for. So there wasn't too many surprises. It was just thru hiking is just an extension of section hiking. If you've done a week before, you can do a thru hike. Basically, you do a week, get in a town, recoup, regenerate, your body and your mind, and go out and do another week. It's just an extension of that. So,
okay. And how long did it take you on the AT?
It took me 6 months. I started April 4th, right in the heart of the bubble, and I finished October 4th on the AT. Mm-hmm. Yep, 6 months. The PCT took a little bit longer for two reasons. My ankle ended up crapping out up in Washington, and then winter came early in 2019. So we were trudging through snow, basically the last 120 miles of the PCT. So I didn't finish that till October 25th. So 6 months and a week or so. CDT took me 6 months and a week. Yeah. So around 6 months on every hike.
Okay. And typically when you are preparing for the long trails, do you do a lot of research and investigation into what you could expect and what to anticipate out there? Or are you kind of, I'm just going to I know the basics, and I'm just going to go.
I wing it. 100%. People, I've had people tell me that's a stupid thing. You should at least prep what you're going into. I never have. I don't look at when I prep for these hikes. Make sure my gear's dialed in. So before I start through hiking, that's why I section hike, so I can at least get my gear dialed in. Had a somewhat sense of what I needed to carry, so that wasn't a big surprise. But as far as looking ahead to like trail towns, resupply points, mileage, water sources, I absolutely did zero research. Take it as it comes. And I made it. So, I think people plan, and some people love doing that. I get it. So I've met people that have planned out every resupply point, how many miles they're doing every single day. Some people like doing that, and I get that, but I'm the complete opposite. Take it as it comes, because I found in my experience from these last 3 trails, plans never work out the way you plan to. Something's going to happen, and those plans are going to have to change. So why stress about it? I'm out there to have fun. I'm on vacation. I don't want to be stressing about. That's why I don't want to work for a living. I don't want to worry about schedules. I don't want to, I just want to go and have fun, enjoy the moment. That's why I'm out there.
Exactly. And it's like Mike Tyson said once. He said that everybody's got a game plan until they get punched in the nose.
Yeah, exactly. What happens if you get caught in a blizzard, man? You can plan for that. You're stuck with the gear that you have on your back. You adapt and you go from there, one step at a time.
Mm-hmm. Now, even though you didn't plan out, mileage, daily mileage or resupply points, were there certain things that you were looking forward to, certain experiences you were looking forward to on the AT, certain locations that you had heard about?
Yeah, obviously there's the iconic places like McAfee Knob is a huge one. Every thru-hiker looks forward to getting to there. Crossing over into Maine, the what's it called? The hardest mile on the AT. What is it called? I can't remember the name of it. Up in Maine. There's certain landmarks that thru-hikers know about. Mm-hmm. So you do look forward to those trail days, in Damascus. You hear stories of how crazy that party is, but you don't know until you actually get there. Same with other trails, PCT, CDT. Of like things like the Cirque of the Towers or just going through the Sierras, Forster Pass, things like this that you do look forward to.
Mm-hmm. And did it live up to the hype? These points on the trails?
Absolutely, yeah. It's yeah. A McAfee Knob. You see photos of that thing. It's the most photographed location on the Appalachian Trail. Not only from thru-hikers, but it's so close to a parking lot. A lot of day hikers go up there and do that. And I end up getting naked in front of like 20 tourists on that day on top of a McAfee Knob. So it was definitely a memorable moment.
A memorable moment for all involved, I bet. So
yeah, I probably gave some people some nightmares for a while after that day.
And any favorite stories from the AT that you like to share with folks? Some good type 2 fun.
Type 2 fun. Let's see. Wasn't too much type 2 fun. The AT. The biggest thing about the AT is just you have to get used to being wet all the time. Like it's the the East Coast and it rains so damn much. It rained on me at one point. It rained on me like 12 days in a row through Virginia. Like when you're putting wet underwear on for like the 3rd day in a row, it sucks. Like you're just miserable.
That can't be healthy for the nether regions to be
chafing.
Oh, geez.
Chafing was a nightmare on the Appalachian Trail. You're wet constantly. You don't even bother drying stuff out. You might get a sunny day for like lunch, and it's like, well, you stop bothering drying shit out because you're just going to be wet again the next day. That's the worst part of the AT, I would say. The terrain, the terrain doesn't get any easier. In fact, it gets harder as you go, especially when you get to like the Whites in Maine. But by that time, you got your trail legs, so it's not that big of a deal. I would say the hardest thing about the AT mentally is putting on wet clothes every single day.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to our talk in April. Now that you're talking about this, it reminds me, you told a horrific chafing story, I think.
Yeah, my nuts were bleeding for like 5 days in a row. And I use Body Glide. It's one of the things, if you look at hygiene kit on these trails, it's very little. I might carry 2 Band-Aids and maybe some tweezers to get some ticks off me. But Body Glide is one of those things that I always carry. And I use it, but again, being wet all the time and like in the summer months, it's hot and you get that moisture. Yeah. I went to go take a piss down by some place by a shelter, and I pulled my shorts down and my nuts were just like a bloody mess. It was horrible. My feet, always take care of. I try to keep dry out my feet every moment I got. But yeah, the nether regions, they suffered big time.
Ouch. And how about the PCT? You did PCT is that 2019 or 2020?
2019, yeah.
2019. And you mentioned Forester Pass as something in the Sierras, something you were looking forward to, and that lived up to the hype as well.
Yeah, so the whole hiking elevation during the snow thing was completely new to me. I was worried about that more than anything else going into that hike. It was a lot of firsts for me. I never hiked through the desert heat before. I never hiked on snow before, never used micro spikes or an ice axe. It was all a learning process. And I learned as I went. I wouldn't say I became an expert at that stuff when I finished, but I felt a lot more comfortable the farther I went. So yeah, the first 3 passes in the Sierra, it was butthole pucker the whole time. Like my leg and knees were buckling. Like I was scared shitless because if you're not familiar with Forester Pass, unless you're a southbounder, you're going through that thing on ice. Like it doesn't melt until like late August. So you're going to have to go through this. There's an ice shoe. So basically Forester Pass, you go up the pass, do some switchbacks, and then you hit this iconic ice shoe. Like you have to go across. It's maybe, I don't know, 50 feet, something like that. But if you drop off the left side of that thing, you're going down. Like ice axe ain't going to stop you. It's so steep. And I know of one guy that went down that thing same year in 2019, and he had to get a trail. He ended up splitting his kneecap open. Like you could see his bone, his kneecap. So I was scared shitless going over that. But you take it one step at a time and you get more comfortable, and you make it through somehow. You know?
Yeah. And 2019, that was a high snow year.
Very high snow year. I think the Sierra were about 200% above average that year. It's one of those things you can't predict. Like you have to get your permit ahead of time. So it's like you either flip it up to Washington and head southbound, which we couldn't do in 2019 because there was so much snow up there. So you couldn't flip anywhere. Like there were some people I think flipped to Oregon, just did some sections through Oregon and just kind of was buying time. But there was so much snow up there that year that it didn't matter how much time you bought, you're going to hike the snow one way or another. So you get to Kennedy Meadows and it was jam packed. I stayed there about a week, just seeing what other hikers were going to do for the Sierra. And I was there a week and I'm like, okay, I can't wait any longer. I got to go. So it's like, go up there. There's a lot of fear mongering on the PCT, especially in the Sierra. Like, oh, don't go up there. You hear from locals, you hear from other thru hikers. Don't go up there. It's too dangerous. Well, I got to see this shit with my own eyes. Like if I'll go up there and I'll say it's too dangerous, I'm not going to take somebody's word for it, because what's dangerous for them might not be dangerous for me and vice versa. So I wanted to see that shit with my own eyes. And I've always said no trail is worth my life. So if I get up there and I don't feel comfortable about going through there, I'm not going to do it. You know what I mean? I'll go back and do it another year. The trails aren't going anywhere, but again, I'm stubborn as well. So I'm going to try something, and I know my limit there. If it becomes too dangerous, I'll bail, but I'm going to go up there and see it for myself.
Okay. So you go up there, you see it for yourself, and what do you decide?
I met this dude going over Kearsarge Passes, which is one of the first couple passes you go over. You actually have to do it twice, because to get into town, you have to do it twice, going back and forth. Well, I did Kearsarge Pass the second time, and I was camped by myself, and I was thinking to myself at night, I'm like, all right, so I've already done like 2 passes, and I didn't really feel comfortable. I wish I had somebody with me. Well, this guy from Israel shows up in my camp, and he had never done this before either. But we sat around, we talked on that at camp, and we're like, we're both scared shitless about this. Let's be scared shitless together, and we'll push each other, and we'll make sure each other are safe, and we'll do this together. And he said, 100%, let's do it. So me and him, we worked through it together first time hiking on snow, and we made sure each other were safe. We always made decisions together, and we pushed forward and making it through. It took a long time. It took a good long month, just over a month to get through the Sierra section. But we made it.
Okay. And before we move on to the CDT, when you finish the AT and when you finish the PCT, what kinds of emotions are running through you? I mean, those are, AT's 2,200 plus miles, the PCT's 2,600 plus miles. You've put a lot of time and energy and effort. You've been out in the wilderness for a long time, and now you are approaching the end. Is that pretty emotional for you on those two trails?
It's the worst and best feeling in the world combined. Like, anybody that's through like one of these trails, most of them will tell you the same thing. Your body is so wrecked, and this was more so for me on the PCT and the CDT finishing. My body was so destroyed. My mind was so destroyed. I was mentally drained, and I was so ready to be done. But then you get within like 100 miles of the end, and you're thinking to yourself, I don't want to finish. Like, even though I'm in so much physical and mental pain, I don't want to go back to where I was working for a living or just being off trail. You're so accustomed. All you're doing is walking, eat, sleep, shit, and walk for 6 months. It's all you know. And this is your own little world you've been stuck in for 6 months. You have to leave it. It sucks. It's a horrible feeling in your gut. Even though you're so wrecked physically and mentally, your heart tells you this is where I want to be, and I don't want it to end. That's why you see so many repeat offenders on these long trails. See, time and time again, I've so many times I've ran into other hikers that I've met on these other trails randomly at some campsite. I'm like, oh, you're out here doing this again, huh? Yup. It's because it's an amazing lifestyle, and you get stuck in that lifestyle.
Yeah, and I don't want this to be sound like a cliche, though it will. I think that this is just an excellent demonstration of it is not about the destination, it's about the journey. And I think so many people in our lives, I mean, we're always looking towards what's next. I have to get here. I have to do this. Can't wait till this happens. And we lose out on the moment and the time that we're, metaphorically and literally on the trail. We should be enjoying every single moment. That's what it is. It's not that end point when it's all over. I mean, it's what we're doing at the time.
Exactly. And people, a lot of people get caught up in numbers and, I pushed 40 miles this day or 50 miles this day. I don't give two shits. Like, I remember that sunset I just saw yesterday. That's what I remember. It's the moments that you hold on to. Nobody cares how many miles you can hike in a day. Some people like to push themselves, and I get that, and to see what my body's capable of. But when you get home, 6 months after you get home from the trail, you're not going to remember that. You're going to remember an amazing sunset you had or amazing campfire. You shared some stories with other hikers. That's the shit you remember.
Yep. And not to put you on the spot, but speaking of moments, what was the top moment from the AT?
Oh, top moment from the AT. It maybe cliche, I don't know. It was finishing, seeing that Mount Katahdin sign.
Yeah.
Only because I had worked so hard to even get on that trail. Everything I had gone through, from getting sober and working 2 full-time jobs for a year and a half to save up money to buy gear and take 6 months off to hike that trail. And then all the physical pain, mental pain I went through on the trail itself. I had that image of Mount Katahdin, that sign I had burned into my mind for like 2 years before I even stepped foot on that trail, wondering what it would be like to wrap my arms around that thing. It was just burned into my head. When I finally saw that thing, just a flash flood of memories went through my head of what I had gone through leading up to that moment. It's a moment I will never forget in my life. Like, I couldn't, like, some things I'll never remember from that hike. If you ask me about a certain town or whatever, I don't remember. But that sign, I'll remember that until I go into my grave, for sure.
I got chills right there. How about top moment from the PCT?
PCT, I would say the moment I met the 3 people I finished the trail with. If you're not familiar, we went through a pretty nasty snowstorm at the later end of the PCT. And going into that last stretch, I had gone out solo, and I was scared shitless from my life. Like, first time on that trail, I thought to myself, I might not finish, because I was prepared to bail. It was just too dangerous up there. When I pushed big miles the first 2 days and luckily caught this group of 3 that were ahead of me, 3 or 4 people. And seeing those people are like, okay, I have a chance to finish this trail, because it was amazing knowing I had some people that had my back finally on this last stretch going through that shit. It was awesome. And without those people I hiked with, there's no way in hell I would have finished that trail. I would have bailed for sure, looking back at what we went through. So yeah, hanging with those guys that last stretch, it was awesome.
Yeah, I'm smiling. I was smiling the whole time you're telling that, because I was taking a cruise through your YouTube channel the other day, and I came upon that one of those videos from the end section of the PCT. And if you guys want to check out Insanity on the trail, check that out. I mean, the conditions were unbelievable. I mean, you were marching through snow that was waist deep. I couldn't even see where the trail was, and just nothing but that for miles ahead of you. I think you had 70 miles of that.
Yeah, we couldn't see the trail either. we were breaking trail. You could see divots sometimes where the trail might be, but we had our navigation out the whole time. We would walk in a direction that we thought there was a trail, and then keep checking the map. Okay, we're in a good location. We can keep pushing forward. But yeah, it was a nightmare. It was basically, the last 60-mile stretch was, knee deep to crotch deep snow at places up at elevation. So yeah, it was pretty gnarly. But we all worked together and we made it somehow. I wouldn't want to repeat that for sure. It took me, after I got home from that trail, it took me about 3 weeks to get the feeling back in my fingertips. I had like frostbite on my fingertips from that.
Oh, ouch. And on that note, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get to what everybody's tuning in for, and that is the final leg of the Triple Crown for IB-TAT, the Continental Divide Trail. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. The John Freakin Muir Pod is sponsored by Outdoor Vitals, the ultralight backpacking gear company whose mission is to improve the mental, physical, and emotional health of mankind by facilitating impactful outdoor experiences. Outdoor Vitals creates innovative technical products with confidence-inspiring education that empower outdoor ultralight adventurers. Their focus on performance enables you to live ultralight with gear you can actually be confident with. Whether you're looking for an ultralight sleep system, shelter, or pack, or if you're looking for top quality apparel for the trail, you can find it at Outdoor Vitals. Do yourself a favor. Live ultra light. And welcome back. We're talking IB-TAT. IB-TAT, before we get to the Continental Divide Trail, let's spend just a little bit of time on your YouTube channel. When did you start that, and how quickly did it grow in popularity? Because you have a lot of followers at this time.
I think I started the channel itself. I think I started about 6 years ago. When I started that channel, I knew I wanted to start a YouTube channel, but I didn't know what I wanted it to be about. I just recently got into backpacking, mountain biking, and these kinds of things. So I wasn't thinking I was going to start a hiking channel per se. If you go way back on my channel, I started filming myself like working out at the gym and mountain bike videos mainly, which quickly turned into doing weekend trips. So I'd go out on the AT for a weekend with my dog, and I'd film that. I didn't plan on. It was for my own personal enjoyment, going to remember these times I was spending with my dog outside. So by the time I had decided to thru hike, well, I'd already had this channel started. I'm like, well, I kind of know how to use Movie Maker, and I know how to kind of put clips together. So I said, I'm going to vlog my thru hike, mainly because I wanted, again, to look back on this stuff years from now and be able to see my whole hike on video. I thought would be cool. Some people are out there putting pen to paper every night journaling. I figured this would be a video journal for me. So that's why I did it. And I've put out a video every single day, basically the last 3 trails. And then as far as it taking off, I had no aspirations of not a single person watching my videos. I had a somewhat of a base following when I started the AT, only because I put out a lot of people are familiar with the Trek. They do like their Badger sponsorship every year. And I figured, well, I get some free gear at least. So I put out a quick, like 30-second video for the contest. I ended up finishing in like the top 5 or whatever. So a lot of people knew me from the Trek. And then when I hit the AT, it just kind of word of mouth type thing, just snowballed from there. And I quickly realized, holy shit, what started as my own video journal. Now I have like 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people watch me walk every day. It's pretty weird. But yeah, it snowballed pretty quick.
Any added pressure knowing that there's that kind of audience watching what you're doing out there?
None whatsoever. Anybody that's followed me for any period of time knows I could give two shits about what people think of me. I'm the most vulgar, like no filter person you'll ever find on one of these strikes, at least on YouTube. So yeah, I don't care. It's, you know, I stopped reading comments mainly. I do read comments from time to time, but I stopped reading them mainly because there's always going to be some critic out there that's not hiking. He's just an armchair hiker. You know, it's easy to watch somebody going through pain and say, well, you should have done it this way, kind of thing. So I just do my own thing out there. If people like it, cool. If they don't like it, that's cool too. You know?
How would you describe the style of your videos?
I got a good credit to two hikers for my style. So when I knew I was going to vlog this thing on the AT, I figured I watched some guys that have done it in the past. Now, this whole vlogging YouTuber thing is fairly recent times. You know, you have Dixie and Darwin, who became probably the two most popular ones. But even before those guys, there were guys like John Zahorian, who I don't know if you're familiar with him. He worked for a gear company for a while, but he's a triple crowner. He's done the PCT like 4 times. That's insane. But he's a good video guy. He was not a vlogger per se, but he put out really good videos when he got off these trails. So I watched him, as well as Nemor, which he doesn't hike anymore. He hiked the AT and the PCT, vlogged every day. And those two guys, if you watch their videos, they're the ones who started like setting the camera down on the trail and walking past it, rather than just like walking with a camera in front of your face. They were actually setting up shots and kind of making it like something you would see on a history or discovery type show. And I thought that was the coolest thing. It shows a different perspective. Like, this guy's just not holding a camera. He's putting this camera down and walking past it. So you can not only see him, but you see the whole landscape that he's in. It puts a scale to the things. When you're hiking through these massive landscapes, you see how little the person is in the shot. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. So I adopted that style of hiking, kind of put my own twist on it over the last few years. But I got to give credit to those two guys, because they're the ones who inspired me to film like that.
Yeah. How many extra miles do you think you walked on the CDT by setting up your camera and then walking back and then walking through frame and then going back and getting your camera?
I don't even want to think about it. I will say it's a nightmare. I could make a whole like outtake video of me cussing at the camera as I'm walking back to it. Like, the shit I do for YouTube. I say it to myself all the time. Like, I am in pain. I've already hiked 25 miles for the day, and here I am setting up this camera and walking back to it. It's a lot of fucking work. The worst of it, I remember, was on this last trail in CDT. There's a section called, you go through the Gila Wilderness, where you're basically hiking in a slot canyon through the Gila River. You're crossing this river like over 100 times, you know. Well, I would set that camera up, walk across the river, then have to walk back across the river to get the camera, then walk again across the river. So I did each river crossing 3 times. Not every one I filmed myself, but a good portion of them I did. It was just back in the water. Here we go. I got to get that camera. I did it a lot, only because I thought it would make a good shot. And so I am thinking of the viewers in that regard. I think it would look better for them to see me struggle across this river crossing, rather than just like getting to the other side and saying, oh, that was a rough river crossing, or that was cold. They can actually see me do it. And I did that for the viewers watching my videos.
You are a storyteller. It's definitely show, not tell. It's not you sitting on the side of a river looking in the camera and saying, oh, I did this and I did that and I did this. You definitely show the viewers what you're going through out there. And I know they appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think, I don't want to trash anybody that does these videos, because everybody's got their own style. But, a lot of the videos I've watched, you see, somebody on the top of a major peak or something. They're like, wow, look at this view and the flowers and the sun, rainbow and all this. Well, how the hell did you get up that mountain? That's what I want to know. Like, it's a struggle. So I generally turn that camera on long before I get to the top of that mountain. You can see me huffing and puffing, and it gives a good perspective of how much you're working out there.
Yeah, I think if people just went strictly from Instagram feeds, they would think that hiking it's a beautiful, joyful. Everything is
Nope.
rainbows and sunshine, and that you don't
Hell
see
no.
the work that goes into getting to those spots.
It's false advertisement for sure, and it gets people out on the trail. But I think that's a big reason why a lot of people quit these trails, because they take Instagram as what through hiking is, and they don't get to see the ass chafing and the toenails falling off and the throwing up and the overexertion and malnutrition. You don't see that a lot on social media. So it's yes, it's beautiful and the flowers are blooming and the deer and the birds and everything. That is 100% true. But there's another side of through hiking that not a lot of people get to see. It's as tough as it is beautiful out there.
Mm-hmm. And I have to say, I really enjoy the opening section of each of your videos. You're very consistent with that in the opening of your videos, and particularly the shot of your backpack where I think there's a patch on there that says, I say the F word a lot.
Yeah, I put that patch on there. I had a patch that said adventurous as fuck. I had my first 2 through hikes, and then, the main thing that people just discover me on YouTube, they can't get over my language. Like, it has become this whole thing. Like, this guy swears every other sentence. Yes, I do swear a lot. It comes from being a line cook for 10 years. Next time you go to Applebee's, I'll tell you right now, the people that are cooking your food back there are swearing every 5 seconds, even though you're having this beautiful, quiet dinner. Okay. It's how line cooks talk, construction workers, whatever it is. So I'm just being me out there. Now, I will say the people that do me in person, that only know me from YouTube, I get this comment all the time, like, you don't swear as much as I thought you did. Well, you got to understand, you're watching a 10-minute video from a 10 to 12 hour hike. Generally, when I turn the camera on, I'm pissed off about something and I need to vent it out of my system. So when you condense all that down into a 10-minute video, yes, it looks like I swear all the time. But the other moments that I don't have the camera on, I'm dancing through the tulips like this is awesome. So yes, I swear a lot. And I would say the majority of thru hikers I've met swear just as much as I do. You just don't see it on YouTube.
TAT, I have a confession to make. Back when we talked in April, I had discovered you by your Instagram account, and I had reached out to you through Instagram, and that's how we connected. Mm-hmm. And it was only after we had our talk that I just found out that you had a YouTube channel. And so I sat down and started watching some of your YouTube videos with my wife, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, listen to the language." And I said, "Yeah, he wasn't like that on the episode. He didn't hardly curse at all on the episode when we were talking." So
yeah, I'm a normal human being. I don't swear every 24 hours a day, but on YouTube, it looks like I do, only because it's condensed down into a video. That's
right. That's right. And you've got stuff to be mad about at that point. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My toenails are falling off. I'm sore, man. I've been hiking 30 miles. Yeah. You'd be just as pissed off as I am.
All right. That's great. Okay. Hey, let's talk about the CDT. This is, I know you were really looking forward to it when we talked back in April. This is going to be the final leg of the Triple Crown for you. And how did it go? I watched your videos, and I know that you encountered some challenges out there.
It was tough. It was the toughest one of all 3 for sure. And that's how a lot of people do. It's a natural progression for thru hikers that do the Triple Crown. A lot of them start on the AT, then go to the PCT, CDT. Progressively gets harder, mainly because the CDT it combines the worst of the PCT and the AT, I think, into one, like the toughest parts. Like, yes, you have the terrible weather, but you also have, crazy terrain, desert heat, and you have longer water carries. It's just a lot of the other 2 trails combined into one. It makes it so difficult. Yeah, it was rough. The hardest thing for me on the CDT, it's just the constant grind. Like, it never got easier. It was just, my body progressively got worse as I went. I never got my second wind or third wind on that trail. It just kept getting harder and harder. And you have to, mentally, it was tough to keep pushing on that trail. On top of that, the constant road walking that you have on the CDT, which is probably the worst part about it. I would say 80% of New Mexico, you're on a road of some sort, whether it be dirt or paved. you're on a road. We had fire closures in Colorado where we had to do like 20 plus mile pavement walk that destroyed your body. The CDT is very incomplete. I think they say it's about 70% complete, but you're doing a lot of road walking on that trail, and it fucks with your head on those long road walks for sure. It's mentally draining.
Right. And there's a lot of alternate routes. And I know that people, I've talked to folks who criticize folks who maybe take a road, which is, pretty flat and level, as opposed to going up and over the obstacle in front of them. What was your path? Did you go through the mountains?
I took plenty of alternates, easiest way possible. A lot of the times, there were some sections, a lot of these alternates, it's the choose your own adventure trail. So, I would say, like, for example, I was talking about the Gila River Wilderness. Mm-hmm. That is not the CDT. That's an alternate off the CDT. But the actual CDT, you're going up at elevation with absolutely zero water for miles. Like, there's some people that did it. You're carrying 7 liters on your back. Have fun with that shit. I'm going to go play down here in the water on top of it being gorgeous. So, yes, choose your own adventure. There's plenty of times where I took a side trail because there was water there. It could have been more beautiful over on the CDT, but I'm out of water. I got to go over this alternate and get water. So you get there how you get there. You know what I mean? There's a lot more. It's a lot easier to be a purist on the Appalachian Trail, and I was one of them. I'm like, I got to see every white blaze. Like, I would get to a road crossing where I got dropped off. I would cross the road, just say I left off right where I ended the day before. PCT and CDT, I was like, yes, I'm going to cut these damn switchbacks because it's quicker down the fucking mountain. Like, I don't give a shit about being a purist. I'm trying to get to Canada before the snow hits. So, yeah, you'll find a lot more people taking whatever route they will to get there from point A to point B on the CDT. You can tell some people's hike will last like 2,600 miles, 2,700 miles. Some people's will be 3,100. It's just whatever you want to do. We're all through hikers.
Right. Now, I talked to Ginger Balls about his CDT experience, and he was really not a big fan of New Mexico, especially the start. He said the water sources were very difficult. The water sources that he did find typically had cow patties in them. He said it was just an absolute miserable start. In fact, he said that if the CDT had been his first trail, his first long trail, he wouldn't have done the other two. It just so happened it was the third trail for him. So,
and Ginger Balls is a badass, so that should tell you something. Like, if he's having a hard time, it's a tough stretch, and it was a tough stretch. The water sources you get, they're shitty. Like, there's no way around it. The PCT, you got water caches, quite a bit of them, where you're drinking legit water that people have left out there for you. CDT, very few times you come on a water cache. Like, you're drinking out of the cow tanks. You're sharing this New Mexico with cows, basically. Mm-hmm. And there's water tanks out there for those cows. You're drinking out of the same water. So, yep, there's dead flies, there's dead bugs. You're kicking cows out of there. You're stepping through cow shit just to get to the water. That's what you're left with, but that's all you've got. So be happy with what you got, because without it, you'd be dead. And there are no natural water sources in New Mexico on the CDT, not one. You're relying on water tanks the whole time. And I'm one of those hikers where I'm paranoid about water. Some people can dry camp, meaning you camp nowhere near water. You just haul water to camp. I don't like doing that. I'm paranoid about water. So a lot of times, especially through New Mexico, I would either cut my day short because I knew I had water here, or I would extend it way into the night to get to the next water source. I had to have water by me to feel peace of mind. But yeah, New Mexico, as well as the Great Basin in Wyoming, same situation. You're going through long, dry stretches with no shade and shitty water. But you need it to live, so you take what you got and don't bitch too much.
You make it sound so appealing.
Right? It sucks, man. Wyoming for me was the worst of it. Yeah, New Mexico, the water sucked, but that Great Basin water, holy shit. I still have the aftertaste in my mouth for drinking that stuff. It was so ungodly, like lukewarm, just like bugs everywhere, cow shit everywhere. I don't care how much. I threw like 4 or 5 drink mix packets into 1 liter of water. It was still nasty. It was horrible.
Wow, I did not expect that. In fact, I was gonna ask you, worst state on the CDT. I expected it to be New Mexico. Maybe it is New Mexico, but I did not expect Wyoming to be down there as well.
Just the Great Basin section. The rest of like the winds, absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
Like unbelievable. Some of the best camp spots I've ever had in my life were in the Wind River Range. I mean, it was gorgeous. But you go through the Great Basin and you're hiking through 100-degree plus temperatures with absolutely no shade. I was carrying an umbrella. I couldn't even use it because the wind's whipping so hard. So you're exposed in the sun all day long, and you're hiking. I remember at one point I got up at like 2 a.m. and started hiking just so I could get to the next water. I had done 20 miles before like 9 a.m., like just to get to water, because it's so ungodly hot out there and there's no shade. It's miserable. But the rest of Wyoming was awesome.
Okay. What was the top moment on the CDT for you?
Getting to Glacier National Park for me. Towards the end there. That's where, like I said, I lived up in Montana. I lived 30 miles from Glacier National Park up there. So that was my introduction to backpacking, was Glacier. And I remember I hadn't been back there since I moved out of Montana. And I remember how beautiful it was. And I was so looking forward to it, even on day number 1, getting up the Glacier. I knew how special it was going to be. Seeing those mountains again on my last leg of my Triple Crown hike back to the same mountains I started hiking at years before was special. And it was the whole hike through Glacier that place is unbelievably beautiful.
Any encounters with big animals?
I've never seen so many moose in my life. I remember on the AT, I saw my first moose ever in the wild up in Maine, crossed over the, what was it? I can't remember what river it was. Anyway, saw my first wild moose in Maine, and I was like shaking like a leaf. Those animals are huge. And then I get up to like Colorado, and I'm seeing like multiple moose every single day. Like they were thick as deer. It was crazy how many moose. And I don't know how many times I got woken up by moose, and they were around my camp, and it was very cool. Yeah, there was a lot of them. I saw a bunch of black bear, and I think I saw 2 grizzlies, but it was never a situation where I thought my life was in danger. But yeah, it was the moose, and those moose can be just as dangerous as grizzlies, though. I was always aware. I had a good stare down with one up in Montana, up in the Bob Marshall Wilderness. It was early in the morning, barely any light out, and this damn moose was standing right in the middle of the CDT, and there was thick brush on both sides. I couldn't get around him. I'm like yelling at him and shit, and this is in the middle of the rut, like in Montana, and the Bob Marshall. Nobody's going to come help me for miles. And this moose could charge me at any moment, but luckily nothing ever happened out of it. But something you got to be aware of when you're out there, especially in the Bob, because the Bob's so damn remote. That's where I used to work at when I was a pack guide up in Montana, and I know how remote that place is. And I've had some bad situations where I got hurt physically up there when I was working. There's nobody coming to get you. Like you're hiking out of there, walking out of there, unless you want to hit your spot device, and that's a hell of an expensive helicopter ride out of there.
Well, I did some research, and I think I saw statistics that moose in Montana, anyway, moose is there are more deaths from moose than there are grizzly bears. So they are the deadlier animal.
Yep. Those things will trample your ass and not even blink. Yep. You gotta be aware of those things for sure. Those are beautiful animals. You see one up close, they're massive, and the cows will charge you too if they're protecting their young. So don't be those people you see on Yellowstone National Park videos out there with your damn GoPro taking selfies. Like, no, this is a wild animal and it will fuck you up.
Yeah. Did you ever hear the story of Jeff Legend Garmeyer and the moose antlers?
No, I don't believe I heard this story.
Okay, great story. I was talking to him about I think he did the Great Western Loop, and he was pretty close to a town. He was heading into a town, and he was on path, trees on either side, high brush, and he saw these antlers, and he thought, oh, these are in great condition. I'm not that far from a town. I'm gonna pick these up. I'll carry them into town. I'll ship them to my house and put those on a wall somewhere. It'd be fantastic. And he gets down to the antlers and grabs a hold of them and quickly discovers that they are still attached to a bull moose who was in the brush there. And so he spent the next 5-10 minutes dodging this moose and keeping trees in between him and the moose. It was a classic story.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah, I've seen videos of moose charging people, but yeah, I'm sure his butthole is pretty damn puckered. even though the beginning part of the story, like those moose antlers are heavy as shit. Like I wouldn't want to pick those and haul those things out of the woods, but he's a crazy dude to begin with. So yeah, that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I'm glad I don't have I mean, that's a cool story to tell. I wouldn't want to experience it firsthand though.
Fair point. Hey, CDT, more populated in terms of hikers or less populated than the other two?
I would say from a normal year, the normal crowds you get in the CDT, it was more populated in 2021, only because you had basically 2 years of hikers out there. Many hikers, including myself, had planned on doing that trail in 2020. As everybody knows, COVID-19 hit and people were encouraged to stay off the trail. So you had the people that had planned on doing it in 2020, as well as the people that were already going to do it in 2021 out there. So the crowds were there, but it was still, that being said, it was still less populated than the AT and PCT. There's many times I went three days without seeing not just thru hikers, but not even a single person, especially when I got up north. It's less populated for sure. Some of these towns you go into, they're podunk towns. Like there's nothing around there. They're not, in the AT of hiker towns, like everybody knows about the Appalachian Trail there. The whole economy is based off the Appalachian Trail. You're going in these towns in like Wyoming, they could give two shits that you're a hiker. Like you're lucky if you get a hitch. So it's very unpopulated, some of these areas you're going into.
Right. And did you pick up a tramley, or did you make some friends out there?
I'll never be part of a tramley. There's people that try to recruit me into their tramley. They're all good people. I'm not bad mouthing them, but
right.
I'm a solo dude, man. I'm out there to hike by myself. That's where I'm happiest. I appreciate the people that I hiked around for safety purposes. Like I did on the PCT in the Sierra. I joined up with somebody. I did the same things when I got to the San Juans on the CDT for safety reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always happier when I'm hiking by myself.
Mm-hmm.
You see people that are out there rolling 10 deep, 5 deep as a group. They hike the whole damn trail as a group. That's the experience they like, and that's their hike. That's what they like to do. I just like hiking by myself. Got it.
And while you were out there by yourself, did you ever have any moments where you thought, I'm not going to be able to finish. I'm not going to make it. Anything happened that put that doubt in your mind?
I had a doubt. The major doubt I had on the CDT was I ended up getting sick towards the end. I don't know if I had COVID or not. It very well could have been, but I think more so it came from malnutrition. I lost so much weight. I think I lost about 25 pounds on the CDT. And by the end of it, my body was shutting down. And I pushed a long day over really tough terrain. 26, 27 miles. It was just nothing but up, down, up, down, up, down in Montana. And I got to camp and I got done hammering in my final tent stake to set up camp. I stood up and the blood rushed out of my head and I collapsed on the ground in front of my tent, just completely passed out. I came to and I'm like, holy shit, what just happened? I went down to the river and kind of dunked my head in the river and kind of came to a little bit. Got my body temperature back to normal. And I woke up the next day and I'm like, that was scary as hell. Like I'd passed out before. I did it twice on the PCT, but this was different. I don't know. My body had basically shut down. And luckily I only had like 6 miles to hike the next day to get into town. I got into that town and I took a few zeros and I really didn't feel any better. I wasn't getting worse, but I wasn't feeling any better. And that whole time in town, I was thinking to myself, is this really worth it, what I'm doing here to myself? Like, there's no shame in quitting right now, but I was so close to the end. I just like pushed through it and ended up finishing. But yeah, that moment was there when I'm like, I don't know if my body can handle it. My mind is there. My mind can keep pushing, but my body is shutting down. So.
Yeah, I want to touch upon, one of the most powerful videos that I watched on your channel. And you are no doubt you are a tough dude. You 3 long trails. That's incredible. Quite an accomplishment. You look very imposing. You've got a very full beard. You've got, tattoos everywhere. Right. But I tell you, I watched you set up your camera, and you get to that marker at the Canadian border of the CDT, and you sit down, and you have a moment there. I mean, emotion overcomes you, and you're literally, you can't get any words out. You're sobbing there against that monument. That was just so powerful.
Yeah, I'm a human being. I look rough and on the exterior, but you go through emotional roller coasters when you're out there. I'm no different than anybody else, and I cry quite a bit on these trails. There's many times, not on video, that I've broken down crying, just from the things you go through on these trails. You're overcoming barriers so many times, things that you didn't think were possible that you could do. And here you are, you're completing these goals that you set out there, like to somebody from an outsider seem impossible, but you're doing it. And something comes over you, and having finished the Triple Crown after everything I've been to and getting sick towards the end and breaking through that, it was a powerful moment for sure. A relief that I was done, but also a sense of accomplishment and being proud of myself. But then also knowing that the last leg is finally done. Like, that was my goal from like 4, 5, 6 years ago. I dreamed of this. And here I am sitting at the Canadian border by myself after hiking, 26, 27, 2,800 miles. And I did it. It's a powerful moment. You'll never be able to put it into words, really. It's special for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I had the same feeling when I finished the AT as well as the PC.
And did you have any doubters in your life that thought, there's no way he's doing this. There's no way he can do that?
Yeah, people say, that's impossible, but they're like, it was more so like, why would you want to do something like that? I got that a lot. Like, why the hell would you want to go hike across the country wearing the same clothes every day for 6 months? It's funny, when I listened to some podcasts on the trail, and I remember Joe Rogan was interviewing some dude, and I was kind of it was background noise, but I heard him say Appalachian Trail. He was interviewing somebody through TAT, and listening to him, an outsider like Joe Rogan who doesn't hike, saying, this dude hikes over 2,000 miles from Georgia to Maine. Like, why would you do something like that? I'm just laughing my ass off because it's what we do. Having done it 3 times now, I look at outsiders and think, why the hell would you want to go to work every day for 30 years at the same job? That to me is crazy. Like, what I'm doing out here is the easy part of life. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, why is Joe Rogan interviewing my guest? He needs to stay in his lane. I'm gonna have to tell him that.
I know. I kind of turned it off real quick because hearing somebody that doesn't know anything about hiking talking about the Appalachian Trail, it means so much to me. I was like, get out of here.
Nice. Now you frame my next question perfectly. You've been doing this, been focused on this for 6+ years. You've accomplished it. What's next for IBTAT? Any idea of what the next challenge is for you?
Hiking, more hiking. I can't tell you for sure. I'm so into this lifestyle now that, what inspires me the most. And I met a couple dudes who have inspired me big time to continue this lifestyle. The old timers that have been around the trails for so long. Nimble Nomad. I got to meet him when I worked at Mountain Crossings in the AT last year. I met Pappy in Georgia on the AT. These dudes are up in their 70s, 80s, 90s. They're still hiking. Like, that is awesome. It's an activity. As long as you take care of your body and your mind, it's something you can do well into older age. And now that I'm 40 years old, it's funny to me because when I was like early 20s, the people in my life at that time that were the age I am now complained how old they were. Like, oh, I'm 40, I'm 50 years old, I'm so old, blah, blah, blah. Bullshit. Like, Pappy is 90 years old. He's still huffing up mountains on the Appalachian Trail. Like, I'm young. I have many more miles to do. So that's what I'm going to do. As long as my body holds out, I'm going to continue hiking. So I'm already messing around, Googling, nerding out on trails to do. There's a whole laundry list of trails I want to do in my life. I would really love to go overseas, and that's what I'm kind of leaning towards if I can make it happen next year. I've always had this obsession with Scotland, and There's the Scottish National Trail, which is about 530 miles from coast to coast. I would absolutely love to do it for photography reasons, mainly because it's so beautiful. Hiking like the West Highland Way in Scotland looks amazing. It'll probably piss rain every day, but I would love to do something overseas only because I've never been over there. But there's many trails in the U.S. that I still want to do. AZT, Long Trail. You got the North Country Trail. It's just it goes on and on and on. There's always one more trail to do.
Yeah, if it rains all the time in Scotland, you get the full Scottish experience up there in the Highlands.
Yeah, exactly. I might have to go full free ball style with a kilt just to get some breathability there. We'll see. But yeah, I'd love to make that happen. If I can do that next year, that would be awesome.
Okay. Let's do a quick top five challenging moments from all three trails. Not five for each trail, but just overall top. Maybe it's the low five. Your lowest moments from the long trails.
The lowest moments. Let's see. I had a moment on it was a road walk, the fire closure on the CDT in Colorado. It was a highway walk, like 20, 30 miles, something like that on pavement. And I ended up breaking down crying on video. I remember this day. I was miserable. Like my feet were thrashed and I had no choice but to walk on this damn highway. It was horrible moment. Those road walks destroy you mentally. That was a low moment on the CDT. When I got sick up in Montana, that was another major low moment. When my ankle cracked out on the PCT towards the end, because again, mentally I'm there. I know I can finish, but my body's giving out. And my ankle, I couldn't put pressure on it for a few days. That was a low moment. Yeah. Different variants of that. The ones where the physical problems are out of your hands a lot of the times, but mentally, you can keep going. Those are the hardest moments when your body gives out on you, even though mentally you're all there and you want to push. But, if your ankle's broken or whatever, you can't do it. You can't do it. Those are the real hard moments.
Mm-hmm. And as we are sitting here talking, so much has come back to me from the last time we chatted. And so we're at that time of the episode where I ask you for your pro tip insight of the week. And to make sure that you don't use the same one as last time, I remember last time.
What mine was last time. Do you remember what it was?
I do. You were just talking about it. And that's what reminded me. It is never quit on a bad day.
There you go. That's always a good one.
Yep. So what piece of trail wisdom do you have this time to share with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better?
I hate to be cliche about the whole thing, and then there's a lot of cliches get thrown on through hiking world, but they're all true. And it's the whole hike your own hike thing. And this one I've always stuck to from the get-go. Like, you have to think to yourself, some people plan these hikes for years. Some people are selling their homes. They're putting stuff in storage. They're taking 6 months of a life they're leaving behind to go do this. How many years or weeks or months or whatever it is you plan to do this hike? This is your hike, and you need it to be the best that you can make it. So you cannot let any other people, or the only thing that dictates your hike out there is Mother Nature. Like, she has first say. But besides that, if you're in a group that is pressuring you to push bigger miles or go into a town that you don't want to or do whatever, this is your damn hike. You do what you want, and you have to be selfish about it, a lot of times, and say, hey, this is what I plan on doing. I'm going to go out on my own, and maybe I'll meet up with another group, but you have to stick to that. This is your hike, and all the sacrifices, and everybody that's out there has made some sort of sacrifice, big or small. So you have to think, yeah, I sacrificed this. This is my hike, and I need to make it special. So hike your own damn hike.
Great advice. So there you have it. That's it. This episode is just about in the books. Hope our listeners enjoyed our time with IB-TAT. Want to thank him for joining us this week. IB-TAT, how can our listeners keep up with you on social media, and where can they find updates on your next adventures?
Pretty minimal with the social media these days, but Instagram is Saved by Mountains. Photography has become a major hobby of mine. Luckily, I can combine it with my hiking addiction. So I post quite often on Instagram. And then for videos, I'll head over to YouTube and just type in IB-TAT, IBTAT. You can find all three of my thru hikes in playlists. Better than Netflix. It's definitely binge worthy. there's hundreds of videos out there for you to watch me suffering on these long trails as well as having the best time of my life. So you go head on over there, and I always keep videos updated on both platforms as to what I'm doing next. So you can find out my future endeavors on both platforms.
Yeah, Doc's mom will vouch for that. Better than Netflix. Check it out. All right. Remember to check out the pod on social media as well. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. IBTAT, you have a TikTok account? Got a TikTok feed coming up?
I do not. No, I'm never. I'm staying away from that one. I can barely keep up with YouTube and Instagram.
I had just started the TikTok account when I had my second interview with Ginger Balls, and I told him that, and he looked at me and called me a teenage girl. So there you go.
Keep doing you. It's all good.
That's right. That's right. Or if you have comments or clips you want to share, you can send it to me at johnfreakinmuir@gmail.com as well. IBTAT, I'm also looking to you to share a recommendation for a book, a movie, documentary, website, some kind of media, adventure media to keep our listeners connected to the trail. We're calling this our adventure media recommendation. What do you have for us?
Okay, I'm going to give you there's a book and a PBS documentary that I have enjoyed for years and years and years. It's not that it's related to thru hiking or anything like that, but it's one that's stuck with me. It's a story of Dick Proenneke, if you're familiar with him. If you're not, go check out his stuff. There's a book called One Man's Wilderness, and they did a PBS documentary on him years ago, which you can still find online. And basically, Dick Proenneke, in his 50s, decided to go off-grid up in Alaska, built a log cabin with hand tools, filmed himself doing it, and lived up there until his 70s. And the PBS documentary is amazing. All footage that he took himself, and as well as the book is amazing too. So I highly recommend those. And it's a good read and watch, especially in these winter months when you might be stuck inside. I go back and watch that quite often.
That's perfect. That's going on the Christmas list for Doc right there.
Yeah, it's a good one for sure. A walk or One Man's Wilderness. I think the PBS documentary might be called something different, but just search One Man's Wilderness. You'll find it.
Okay. And before we wrap things up, I've got one more segment for you called What Have I Not Asked You That You're Dying to Tell Us About? What did we miss?
I'm not the person completely that you see on YouTube. The one comment that gets repeated constantly to me that has started to get under my skin is the whole language thing. And it takes a lot of times people meeting me in person to say, hey, this is actually a good dude. I'm not the cussing sailor dude only on YouTube that you see on those videos. I'm a normal dude that goes through normal problems out there. So you only see one side of the story. And the people that get to meet me find that out, that I'm actually a pretty decent human being. I'm not a cussing sailor 24 hours a day.
Okay. And that's a wrap from the John Freakin Muir studio. Any shout outs to friends and family, IBTAT?
My dog, Roscoe P. Waggletails. I missed him dearly every time I go hiking on these long trails. So he's passed out on the floor below me right now. I'm look forward to spending this winter with him for sure. Nice.
Who watches Roscoe when you're gone?
Some of my followers the last 3 years. That's how amazing these people are. They've almost become like family to me. There's always somebody willing and anxious to watch Roscoe when I go out on these long trails.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for tuning in. Always remember the trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if you're picking bugs and sticks and cow patties out of your water. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.
Amen to that.